Teshuvah from Teshuvah Ministries, and tonight I am going to record probably one of the most important videos I will ever record, and that is because it deals with salvation. Tonight we're going to look at how to get to the happily ever after. What is the path? What is that narrow path to get to the happily ever after? What are we saved from and what are we saved to? Because isn't most of us have that question, the same question, how are we saved, right? So how do we get saved? Not everyone. Some people don't care, but if you're like me, you probably care a whole lot on how do you get to the happily ever after? How do you get to paradise? How do you get eternal life? So tonight, I'm going to walk you through something that you may have never heard before. A lot of us have heard, pieces and parts of how to do that. Some denominations seem to have it mapped out pretty well, but unfortunately it's not according to the scriptures and what the scriptures say. I want to know what the scripture says about how to get to the happily ever after. I don't want what a denomination tells me. I want to know what Papa says. I want to know the truth. So in order to do that, though, we have to do some dividing of truth. We have to look deep into the scriptures. We have to understand the story. So in order to understand how to get to the happily ever after, we have to know Papa's story. Yes, Papa has a story, and it's been going on for a very long time, way before you and I were born. And we need to understand his story in order to understand his plan. And it's so wonderful that on this side of Yeshua, we can look back and we actually have some hindsight and we can see a plan that he has enacted to get us a path to the happily ever after, a path that we can travel to the happily ever after. So we're going to find out about what grace really is. We're going to find out what you have to do to get to the happily ever after, what path you have to walk. What is obedience? What does this all look like? How do we get there? How was sin paid for? What does forgiveness, what is that even all about? Like, how does that actually work? How does blood cover sins or do away with sins? How does it abolish sin, So we're going to look at something that I'm really excited to share with you. And I actually have been putting this off for a couple of years now. I feel that now is the time. So what I'm going to show you tonight is the plan of salvation. I'm going to show you the first Shavuot, and I'm going to show you Shavuot fulfilled. This is the time of year that Papa wants to talk to us about the path, how to get to the happily ever after. Okay, so here we go. You must understand that Papa does everything legally. There is mythical paperwork that is required for certain transactions. So Papa doesn't do anything illegal. As we found out at Yom Kippur is the day that the courts are open in heaven. So we see that there's a court, we see that there are rulings, we see that there are judgments laid down. Everything is done legally. So we've got to look at the story with those glasses on, with that eyes. All throughout the scriptures, you see all kinds of confirmation that Papa does things legally. So that's a really important thing to wrap your brain around as we begin this journey. This is truly the heart and foundation of the Melchizedek understanding. And every Melchizedek priest, every priest of Yeshua, every disciple of Yeshua, anybody that wants to follow Yeshua needs to understand this Melchizedek foundation in order to operate effectively as a priest, in order to get to the happily ever after, in order to understand the story, in order to have shalom about the fact that you are on that narrow path, or you better get your bum over there and get on that narrow path if you want the happily ever after. So I also want you to know that I do have an 18-inch by 12-foot graph that you can purchase from our website. This graph will take you through what I'm going to take you through right now. And you can have it to show your friends. Put it up on your wall in your hallways, or use a scroll, or figure out where you can hang this 12-foot graph and walk your friends and family through this. There's also going to be a workbook, or a book actually, that comes out later from us. Tonight in this video, because this is so long, I'm going to take you through the story. I'm going to do it as a story. So I'm not going to write down all the verses for you. I'm not going to proof text for you. I'm going to take you through the story. And you can see whether it rings true. You can go ahead and divide the word yourself. I'm going to give you some guidance as to where to go. Isaac and I are the editors of Dr. David Perry's book, Back to the Melchizedek Future. This is a great book to begin your journey into the Melchizedek Priesthood, into understanding what the Melchizedek Priesthood is all about the Melchizedek High Priest and King Yeshua. This helps divide the word of truth and figure out what was done away with and what remains. And this is where you will find your very first study on it right here. Isaac and I at some point are going to put together our take on it, or in a book we think is going to be called The Legal Bride. We have a little different spin on it. We wanted to clarify a few things, so I think our book will clarify some stuff and help people understand this in a little bit fresh view. So I hope you wait for that book to come out and then get that when it does. Hopefully in the next little bit. I don't know, we'll see. But tonight I just want you to know I'm going to take you through the graph like a story. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you Papa's story. I'm going to tell you Israel's story. Okay, so don't expect me to spend a whole lot of time listing out verses and stuff tonight. You have resources in order to get those, and resources are coming. It's on the graph. It's going to be in our book. It's in Dr. David Perry's book. Just open up your scriptures, and on our website there's all kinds. And if I can right now, I will put some in. But for now, I just want you to sit back and relax. Okay, I want you to relax and take a chill pill. All right, I don't want you to be so stressed out about does this match and just. I want you to just relax, and I want you to hear a story. I want you to hear Papa's story, and I want to see if in your heart, if the rock is living there, it's going to ring true. All right, so watch now. Okay, you ready? This is probably I'm nervous. I'm literally nervous. I'm so nervous because this is so important. And I know that you're going to judge me. I know that you're going to find fault, or you're going to be very moved, one or the other. And frankly, I don't care. I seriously don't care if you don't like it, because it's the truth, and it's nothing but the truth, and I know that for a fact. I have been a Berean. I have studied. This is not my opinion. This is not, which I have been accused of. This is not my opinion. This is not anything more than looking at the scriptures and dividing the word of truth as we're told to do, to be Bereans, to look deep and decide and figure out how to understand the change that happened with Yeshua. Very important. If you don't understand the change that happened with Yeshua, you're stuck. He did come to do away with something. He did come to restore something. He did change something. Hebrews talks about it. When you understand the change that happened when he came, Hebrews will make sense, people. It makes complete sense with the eyes of understanding what changed. So I'm going to walk you through it. Okay, so there's a few things that we need to agree on before we start really looking into this. So the first thing that we need to agree on is that Yahweh Elohim has always been and always will be. All right, so that's the first thing. So we'll write it here. We'll write Yod He Vav He Elohim. Okay, so Yahweh Elohim, all three of them. The scriptures makes it very clear there are three. The Father, the Son, and the Ruach, and they all three have always been and always will be. So they've always been, right? And they always will be. My line's a little sketchy, but always been and always will be. Now, the other thing we have to agree on is that Yahweh Elohim is called the Melchizedek. He's the king of righteousness, right? That's Hebrew for king of righteousness. So the Melchizedek. Okay, so Yehovah is the Melchizedek. Yehovah, the Father, is the Melchizedek. Okay, we also have to agree on the fact that the scriptures call Yehovah love. He is love. I think it's very clear in the scriptures that it teaches that Yehovah is love. Yahweh is love. So that we have to agree on. Love. Maybe I'll get a, no, I'm not going to get a red one. I'm going to use this one. Love. He is love. Okay, so we can all agree that Yehovah Elohim has always been and always will be, right? Yeah. Now we can always also agree on the fact that Yehovah is love. And because he's love, love has always been and love will always be, right? Because Yehovah is love and he's always been and always will be and he's everlasting, then there's an everlasting law that goes with him. Because love has a law. Love, by definition, is other-centered. Now, I love some of Ty Gibson's works. I think he had See with New Eyes, Endless Falling in Love, a few books of Ty Gibson's that I just love because they talk about this idea that he is love and what that looks like. The word Hesed and everything. I think it's the God of Desire is one of his books. So those are really good books. But love is other-centered. That's the definition of true love. Other-centered love, which, on a side note, just so you know, if you look at the definition of love, then Elohim could never have been just one, could never have been alone, because love, by definition, is other-centered. So if there was no one else to pour love into or to receive love from, then love couldn't exist if there was just one. Okay, if we don't agree on that right now, you might as well just stop the video and go away. Bye-bye. If you do, though, and you like this, stay with me. Okay. So because Yehovah Elohim is the Melchizedek, and he's always been and always will be, there is a law of love, and he is love. So there's a law that goes with him, and has always been and always will be. This is called the royal law. He's a Melchizedek, so he's the king of righteousness. He's royalty. So when I say Melchizedek, I'm talking about royalty. So he is royalty. He is the royal one. They are the royal family. There is a royal law of love that goes with him wherever he goes. Always been, always will be. It's always been love, always will be love. There's this royal law that goes with him because he is everlasting. There's an everlasting royal law. And that royal law, I'm going to put on this line right here. I'm just going to write it, okay? So this is the royal law of love. Okay. So what's really important to remember and know is that this is the law that if you break it, you die. Okay? So this royal law of love has always existed and always will be. And if you don't love, the natural consequence of not keeping this law, not having other-centered love, but preserving yourself and being self-centered, all that stuff, is going to be eternal separation from Papa. The natural consequence of breaking this law is eternal separation from love itself. And the first one to have experienced that is Lucifer. Lucifer broke this law of love, and there is no salvation for angels. And you will see why in a little bit. But he broke this, and he broke the law of love because he was being selfish. He was thinking about himself. He wanted to be God instead of just an angel. So not being other-centered, not being loving is going to break this law, which is in the end eternal death. All right, so Lucifer was the first one to break this. take it back one step here. Basically, like we were talking about up here, we have Yehovah Elohim, who has always been and always will be, and with him goes the royal law of love, because he is love and he is the Melchizedek. So you break this royal law of love, and the result of the consequence is eternal separation from Papa, which is eternal death. So on the graph, you will see this purple line right here. This is that concept up here. So this goes 12 feet throughout the whole entire graph, and I'm going to unroll the graph and teach as we go here. But just so you know, this is representative of Yehovah Elohim. He is the Melchizedek. He's always been, always will be. And what goes with him is this royal law of love that we have got to keep in order to not die. So here we go. Hasatan was the first to break this royal law, but there's no salvation available to angels, and you'll see why in a little bit. But and then, as we talked about before, the definition of love is other-centered. So here we go. So Yehovah decides to continue to create, even though there is already sin in the universe with the fall of Lucifer. He creates paradise. So we see right here, he has created paradise. We have a beautiful world. We have Adam and Hava. We have beautiful things that Papa has created for us to enjoy, for it to be our home. So this is representative. Paradise is created in the middle of sin. There's sin in the universe, and he decides to continue to create. How wonderful that he loved us so much to take the risk to go ahead and continue creating, even though there was sin in the world. All right, so he made Elohim, the three of them, as we talked about before. They created man, Adam and Hava, in their image. They were created to love and be loved. So they are a reflection of Yehovah Elohim. Yehovah Elohim is love, remember? And so we were created as to be reflections of that love. And so we were made to love and be loved as well. We were made like them, of course. All right, so the wedding present that Papa gave Adam and Hava, because remember, Yehovah gives freely. When he gives something, he really gives it. Okay, he doesn't hold on to it with strings. He gives it. So he gave the title deed to the planet that he had just made. He gave that to Adam and Hava. And it's like a wedding present, right? So Yehovah Elohim, he creates Adam and Hava in their image, remember, to be likenesses of him, and them to be other-centered and love. They'd love and they'd be loved, right? In return, he gives them as a wedding present the title deed to the planet. Now, how cool is that? He creates them as little king and little queen of the planet and gives them the title deed. He literally gives them the planet. And we need to understand that he actually gave it to them. Briefly, I want to diverge here for a second. We can see that things are done legally in the heavens. We can see that this is the title deed that the Revelation is talking about, because the only one that can open it is the Lamb, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you can see that they did own it at one point, and then they did give it away, because we see later on in the story, in the scriptures, we see that Hasatan says that he owns it. As in, he takes Yeshua to the temple and stands him up there and says, hey, look at all this. I will give you all of this if you just worship me. All these kingdoms I will give you. Well, he obviously had ownership over those to offer to Yeshua. So there is definitely a title deed to this planet that is being fought over, that was being fought over. All right, but let's go on with our story. Okay, so here's the title deed. Now what we have here is, because there is sin in the universe, Now Papa needs to make sure that the humans remember his royal law of love. Remember this purple line, this royal law of love. And they need to know they need to know that they need to keep it. And they need to know that it exists. They're going to learn about his royal law of love by being with him every evening. They get to stroll in the garden together, and he's going to share with them his law. He's going to share with them his heart. He's going to get that. They're going to get to know him, and they're going to know he is love. Okay, so just for a second, let's look at Adam and Chava. Okay, so Papa made Adam and Chava to work together. He made them to work together in a chad, so as one. Without one, the other one wasn't going to work properly. Without this one wasn't going to work properly. Adam is the strength, and Chava is the beauty, reflections of Elohim. If they do not work together, they will not be able to resist Hasatan, which is the problem that happened at the tree. And we'll talk about that in a second. But basically, Papa decided he was going to pass down the Melchizedek priesthood. So he was going to give Adam a job, and Adam's job was going to be to pass down the royal law of love to his children, to his family. He was going to teach his family how to love. All right? So he walked and talked with Papa. He knew how to love, and he was going to teach his children. So here you see the Melchizedek passing down a Melchizedek priesthood, or a Melchizedek priesthood. So Papa is going to pass down this priesthood to his firstborn, his first created. Of course, Yeshua is his firstborn kin, but he created Adam as his firstborn, first created. And so Adam has now got the royal priesthood job, which is to teach his family about Papa's law, how to not break it, how to keep it. All right, and so for every firstborn after that, that royal priesthood was passed down. So with that royal priesthood came all kinds of benefits. And so this is why you see with the story of Jacob and Esau, why that was such a big deal, was because the priesthood was coming down to the firstborn, and that firstborn was going to get some inheritance, they were going to get land, they were going to get all kinds of things that the other one was not going to get. So there was definitely prestige and all that came with this priesthood, and it came to only the firstborn in the family. Now I know that there's all these things with the switching of hands and the secondborn, so that's all Papa's thing, but the idea that it came down to the firstborn. So now what happened, we needed this because there's sin in the universe now. So because there was sin in the universe, this priesthood had to begin and had to start. Papa had to begin to figure out how to teach everyone how to keep his royal law of love and who he was and what he was about in order for them to resist Hasatan. So he did everything he could at that point when he was creating paradise to put into place what humanity would need in order to resist Hasatan, to resist Lucifer, to resist the snake. He gave them each other, and if Adam and Chava worked properly together, they would resist the snake very easily if they worked together. And then he created a priesthood where that priest, the head of the home, the firstborn, would teach the family about Papa's law, about the royal law of love, about who Papa was. So he put into place all kinds of stuff in order for them to not break this law and sin. But what happens? Of course, there are two trees in the garden. One tree is the good tree, the tree of life, and the other one is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And notice it's the knowledge of good and evil. Yes, the knowledge of good and evil. And did you know that the word da'at, which is data or information, dumping information into your head, comes at that? It's the first time you see that word in the Hebrew scriptures is the tree of da'at, of good and evil. But then the first time you see the word yada, which I love these two words, the yada and da'at. Yada, the first time you see that is when Adam yadad Chava and they bore a son. So intimacy, yada is intimacy, heart intimacy. This is where Papa wanted to live with us, in heart intimacy, not in data. Okay, people? So when you're studying, when you're looking at stuff, when you just get your head in the books all the time, Yeshua actually grabbed that scroll and said, you have your head in the book and the scriptures all the time, but I'm standing here right in front of you and you don't even recognize me. So be really careful when you study, that you remember it's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Okay? You can have too much. You really can. Knowledge, da'at, has a purpose. And listen to me carefully, because I'm not saying don't study. I'm not saying don't be brilliant, and I'm not saying don't check stuff, because we all need to, because we've been lied to so much, of course. But what I'm saying is, listen to me carefully, da'at has a purpose. So data, information has a purpose. What is that purpose? That purpose is to move your heart into yada with Papa. If the data, the da'at, the information does not move your heart into yada with Papa, then there's no point for that data. There is no point for that da'at, because that's the only reason that we need da'at. Do you understand? So if you have data or information that comes in and it's not moving your heart into yada, it's not moving you closer to Papa, into heart intimacy with Papa, then what do you do with it? It may be true, it may be right, but maybe it's not the time nor the place that is for you right now to be moving your heart. So what do you do with it? You shelve it and you say, Papa, when you're ready, bring it back. The Ruach is your helper. The Ruach is here to help you through this process. So the Ruach will bring that back to mind when the time is right to move your heart into closer intimacy with Papa. But if you force it, it will do an opposite thing for you. It will be like the tree, because it will take you down a path that you're not supposed to go down. Da'at has a point. Don't forget that. Okay? All right, let's go back to the tree. So here is the test proving Hava and Adam's loyalty to Papa is at this tree. So I've done quite a bit of looking, and this tree, you can see all kinds of artwork and stuff from ages past, and that tree looks like has a snake wrapped around it, and it looks like a garland. And you can see old paintings and all this other sculptures and stuff of a Christmas tree with a snake wrapped around it. You can see this Christmas tree right here, can't you? Oh yeah, the balls, the apple. Papa said, do not eat from that tree. Do not take from that tree. Only eat from the tree of life. But what happened? Adam and Hava did not work together in Echad. And this is what all my Ladies of Teshuvah workshop is all about. And if you're interested in my Ladies of Teshuvah workshop, then I encourage you to go on to our website and look at how to either host one or see if there's a workshop in your area or nearby, because we really explore this right here. And what original sin was on a woman and what it is on a man. So this is an incredible moment here to explore and figure out what actually happened there. But basically you had the two that did not work together. So the strength abandoned the beauty, and the beauty used her beauty for something that she should not have used it for. So this was the proof. This was the time of proving, and they failed. So they sinned, right? They sinned because they questioned the heart of Papa. Bought the lie from Hasatan. Began to question the heart of God. Began to question his love. So what did Hasatan really want right here at the tree? What was his goal? His goal was to get the title deed. His goal was to not just hurt Papa. His goal was to get the title deed. So through deception, he got Hava to question the heart of Yehovah, and he ended up getting the title deed to the plant and became the prince of the world. So Adam and Hava at the tree broke this royal law of love. They broke it, number one, because they distrusted the heart of Yehovah, but number two, they broke it because they did not love each other. Adam did not stand up and be the strength that he needed to be, basically taking that snake and throwing it across the garden and destroying it, to protect her. And her using her beauty in a way that she should not have been using to offer him the wrong kind of worship. So we see both of them not thinking about the other person, not loving the other person. They began to operate in a self-preservation manner. They began to operate in a very selfish manner. So that is what broke this royal law. They didn't love Papa, they didn't love each other, they didn't love themselves. The three. What does he say? What did Yeshua say? The greatest commandment, love Yehovah with all your heart, love others as yourself. Yeah, so that's where they sinned. So this is original sin, all right? So now, earth and its inhabitants are thrown into darkness. Inhabitants are now immediately thrown into bondage and into darkness. They are no longer eligible to be little king and little queen of the earth. The title deed went to Hasatan. So what Adam and Hava did gave Hasatan, the adversary of Yehovah, the right to claim the earth and its inhabitants. And he immediately threw the earth into bondage, into slavery, into darkness. So now we have a problem. At this point, what is the future of man look like? At this point, they have broken the royal law, which means that they die. There is no other way. They've broken it. They are going to be eternally separated from Papa now, unless he does something. So now Yehovah's goal is to figure out a way by which humanity can keep this royal law of love without breaking it so that they won't die. And so he's going to have to pay for, he's going to have to figure out how to pay for original sin, but he's got to also figure out how to get humanity to keep this and to be perfect like him in order to keep this so they don't die. So now he's got quite a bit to figure out. And he is Elohim, and what they came up with is completely and utterly stunning. The royal priesthood that is going to teach their family Yehovah's royal law, being passed down from firstborn to firstborn. So you have from Adam to Seth, and Seth to Enosh, and Enosh on down through to Noah, Noah to Shem, Shem on down through to Abraham. Okay, so now this is so cool. We're going to start getting into how Papa is going to figure out how to pay for original sin and how to give people what they need to keep this royal law of love and not die. So Yehovah sees Abraham. Abraham is Melchizedek priest. He's a firstborn. Abraham, he likes Abraham. So Yehovah chooses Abraham to begin his plan of redemption through, to make a covenant with Abraham. We're going to see what this covenant is. Now, a lot of people call it the Abrahamic covenant, but let's look at this. And again, Dr. David Perry's book goes through this really detailed very well, so make sure and get this book so that you can know what this is talking about. But I'm going to take you through it in a short version right here. Yehovah begins by making an oath to himself. In Genesis 12, you see Yehovah making an oath. He promises certain things that are going to happen to Abraham. And this oath is not dependent on a human being. It's not dependent on anybody except for Papa. He's promising himself that something is going to happen, and he doesn't change. So if he promises himself something, you can be rest assured that that is going to happen. If you read Genesis 12, you will see over and over that Yehovah begins to state this. So he makes an oath to himself, and he states it several times before into Genesis 15. You'll see, I think it's about 4 times in there that he restates this oath, this promise. What he's promising Abraham land. He's promising him, kids as numerous as the stars and the sands of the sea, different things. And so finally, Abraham, it says in there that Abraham believed Yehovah and it was credited to him as righteousness. But then in the next verse, it basically says, how am I going to know that this is for real, that you're really going to come through with this? And that is when Yahweh begins to make this covenant with Abraham. Upon Abraham's request, Papa asks him to go and get animals, certain kind of animals, and divide them in half, and then they were going to walk through the pieces. Now this is the way, as far as I understand, of course I was not there, but as far as I understand, this is the way that some covenants were made. This is called a blood covenant. A blood covenant was when Abraham cut those pieces, there was going to be a ton of blood all over him. Remember, he had to swat the flies away and stuff for a long time, so there's going to be a ton of blood in this blood covenant. Now, basically what would happen is the two parties making the covenant would walk through the pieces together. And if either one of them broke the details of the covenant, then that person would die like the pieces that they walked through. So Dr. David Perry talks about this covenant that they make, the Abrahamic covenant, as a guarantee of the oath. So in Genesis 12, we see Papa make an oath to himself. In Genesis 15, we see the guarantee of the oath. Okay, so to say, I promise you, I'm guaranteeing that my oath is good, that I'm true, that I'm saying what I mean, and this is how you will know. So as we see how this covenant process continues on in Genesis 15, we see that Yahweh puts Abraham into a trance. Now it's an awake trance because he's talking to him as he's doing this. And so he's in this awake trance, Abraham is not allowed to go through the pieces. Now who goes through the pieces on Abraham's behalf? Yes, it's Yeshua, because we see what do we see? We see two things that go through the pieces. We see a smoking furnace go through the pieces and a burning lamp. Okay, smoking furnace, obviously Yahweh, obviously Papa, obviously Yahweh. He is definitely the all-consuming fire. He is the smoking furnace that goes through. The burning lamp, who is the light of the world, is Yeshua. So Yeshua is going, so this is, you see two parties going through, which should really help everyone who has any idea, who is confused about, is there one or is there three? Obviously, there are two parties, two entities going through this, through the pieces right here, and we can see it's Papa and we can see it's Yeshua. Now, Yeshua goes through on behalf of Abraham. Okay, so if this covenant gets broken, which this guarantee that they're making right here, it's like if you think of it like an engagement ring, okay? So what they're doing is, Papa is giving Abraham like an engagement ring. It's a promise of a future event. And what is that event? The event is going to be a wedding at Mount Sinai. Abraham doesn't know that yet, but that's going to be the answer to this promise. All right, so the promise is the engagement ring. He's promising, and he's saying, I'm going to come through. I'm going to give you the answer to this, but not yet. But right now we're entering into this covenant. So, and one of the most important things to understand about this covenant is that there is a death position that is attached to this covenant. And this death position says that if somebody, one of these two parties, breaks this covenant that they're making, Abraham and Papa, if one of them breaks this covenant, then they die. It's what's called a death position. Okay, so Abraham did not go through the pieces, right? Yeshua went through the pieces on behalf of Abraham. So Yeshua and Yehovah are taking this death position. They are assuming all the ramifications of this covenant that they're making. And they're saying, if Yehovah breaks it, Yehovah dies. If Yeshua breaks it, Yeshua dies. But Yeshua is going through on behalf of Abraham. So it's not Yeshua that's going to break it. It's Abraham's descendants that are going to break it, and Yeshua will die on their behalf. Okay? Yeah. Remember, this is Yeshua pre-incarnate. So this is Yeshua before he became Yeshua. He didn't have, I don't think his name was Yeshua then. His name, he was the burning lamp. He was Yeshua incarnate before, okay? So the two things that they were agreeing to in this, as they walked through the pieces, was they were agreeing to keep the contract to come. All right, in the contract to come, which we see at Mount Sinai, which was the first Shavuot, which we're going to get to in a few minutes, you see in that contract that Abraham and his descendants had to keep, Abraham's descendants had to keep certain things, and Yahweh had to do certain things. So if Yahweh didn't do certain things, he wouldn't be keeping the contract, and if Israel didn't keep certain things, they wouldn't be keeping the contract. Okay? They also agreed that whichever one did not keep their bargain, keep their handshake, then they would die like those pieces that they just walked through, like the animals that they just walked through. Now remember, there were birds, there were doves, and the doves were not cut in half. Their bones were not broken, remember? Pointing forward to when Yeshua came, and remember when he died on behalf of Israel and humanity, his bones were not broken. We'll go forward just a little bit, where Abraham is asked to sacrifice Isaac. Now, with this kind of covenant making, this blood covenant making, there was also, as Dr. David Perry talks about, there was also a trade of personal items. So Yehovah and Abraham were going to trade personal items, trade firstborns. They were going to trade firstborn sons. So Yehovah was following through on the way these contracts were made, and he asked Abraham to take his only son up to Mount Moriah. That's where Isaac and Abraham, where this whole situation took place there, was on Mount Moriah. And where was Yeshua slaughtered? On Mount Moriah, right? So Yehovah in his mercy stopped Abraham from doing that, right? You know, as he's going to do it, Yehovah stops him and gives him the substitute. Beautiful picture that foreshadows the work of Yeshua. But remember, on the same Mount Moriah, Yehovah sacrifices his only begotten son. So a beautiful picture right there of that covenant still. I mean, there's still stuff going on with Papa. 420 years later, we see the answer to the promise made back in Genesis 15. Remember, you got the engagement ring basically given back then. It's the guarantee of a future event. The guarantee of an engagement ring is a guarantee of a future event of a wedding. And here you have 420 years later, Yehovah begins his process of wooing, romancing Israel out of Egypt. So basically he's saying, check out how great and powerful I am. I'm going to be the greatest husband you ever had. Watch and see me fight for you. I will always be like this if you will just be my virgin bride kind of thing. So he chooses and he pursues Israel, which is Abraham's descendants, remember? So they are slaves in Egypt. They've been put into bondage there for many years. And then he's going to kick some butt, and he's going to bring them back out. And he's going to bring them into the wilderness and make them his bride. Part of his plan with the guarantee, so the guarantee of a future event, the wedding that was going to come at the base of Mount Sinai, his plan was to create a nation of royal priests. He wanted a nation of Melchizedek priests. That was his goal. Instead of just firstborn to firstborn to firstborn, he was going to make it now for everyone to be a nation of royal priests unto him. He was going to bless the world through Abraham by creating this nation of royal priests and have them go out into the world and bring people into covenant with him, bring people into Israel so that they could get to the happily ever after. That was the goal, to teach everyone about his royal law of love, to teach everyone about him and about his heart of love. That was his goal. That's one of the jobs of a Melchizedek priest, is to teach others about Papa, about his heart, about this royal law, about love and what that looks like. In order to accept this position of royal priests, of being a royal priesthood, Israel had to they had to make an agreement with Papa. And the agreement that Yahweh wanted was he chose a blood covenant. He chose something that looks like a marriage, all right? It was a marriage type arrangement that he chose, that he asked Israel to enter into so that he could go ahead and make good on what he promised. It's called the first Melchizedek contract. This is the agreement that Israel was entering into with Papa there at the base of Mount Sinai. In Exodus 19, they're at the base of Mount Sinai. They've come out of Egypt. He's wooed them out. He's fought for them. He's brought them all the way across the desert. And on Shavuot, 3 days before Shavuot, he says, purify yourself, take a shower, put some clean clothes on, wash your clothes, and come purified to me in 3 days at the base of Mount Sinai. So they do that. They come on Shavuot to the base of Mount Sinai for this wedding that they're going to have. Papa yells down, says, will you obey me? Yes, we will. Then he shouts down, he starts to begin to shout down his commandments. And what he does is stunning. For the first time in all of history, you see this royal law of love spoken in human words. Okay, so this is love. What does love look like? Well, he tells us what love looks like, what it looks like from one to another, and what it looks like from us to Papa. He tells us what it looks like as he's yelling down. I say yelling, but he wasn't yelling. But he was speaking his words, his love, his law of love. He was speaking those words down to the people, and he was telling them in a language and understanding how we could understand it, right? So he's explaining what love is in human terms. So we see that in Exodus 19 through 24. So here we go. In Exodus 20, he begins to speak. You have the first 10, have no other gods before me, remember the Sabbath day, yada, yada, yada. You have the first 10. When he gets done with the first 10, Israel's like, you're scaring us. Don't talk to us anymore. Tell everything to Moses and we will obey Moses. So Moses goes back up, blah, 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 and Yahweh continues to speak to Moses, and Moses writes all the words down. In Exodus 24, you see that Moses writes all the words down in a book, and he calls it the Book of the Covenant. He does a sacrifice. He sprinkles the blood on the scroll. He sprinkles it on the people. So you have a blood covenant going on. Then what did you have? You have a covenant confirming meal on the floor of heaven. So Nadab and Abihu, Moses and Aaron and the 70 elders go up to the mountain, and it looked like a blue sapphire floor, and they end up having a covenant confirming meal on the floor of heaven to confirm the deal that they had just made. It's kind of like, this is how Dr. David Perry talks about it. It's kind of like a wedding. You know, you have the wedding, and then afterwards the two families get together and they have something to eat. Even if it's only just cake and something to drink, you're basically confirming what just happened, and you're saying, we agree, we're here together, we're celebrating, we agree to this contract. So that is what happened. The formalities of a blood covenant. These are the formalities that enact the contract. Okay, so that in that contract, you see there are things that the bride has to do, and there are things that the groom has to do. But you can see in there where he's spelling out his law of love, and you can see where it changes from spelling out his law of love, this is what it looks like to love each other and love me, to saying, okay, now I'm going to send an angel ahead of you, da 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 da. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff in that contract that says, this is what I'm going to do for you if you keep this royal law of love. So you can see there that this royal law of love is now written down in Exodus 20 to 23, somewhere around in there. You can see the contract details in there at the end of when he's speaking down his words of his love. You can see the contract deal, the contract fine print. Okay, that's in this first contract. I'm calling them contracts because if you call it Old Covenant and New Covenant, it gets really confusing. When you're understanding it this way, you have to begin to speak in the idea of contracts to understand what was a heavy contract, what is a light contract, what bennies are in the old contract, what bennies are in the new contract. So I want you to get used to understanding this is a contract. There are 2 contracts that were made, this one and one to come. But we'll talk about the one to come in a minute. So here is this first contract being made. This contract bound Israel to keep this royal law of love. And it bound Yahweh to fulfill his promise of blessing. Remember the blessing that he promised back here to himself, the oath? And it was, and then it was promised here in Genesis 15. That was the guarantee. This is the contract that is going to bind Papa to keep his promise of blessings. For a moment at the formalities that enact the contract. So we have a blood ratification. In this first contract, it was animal blood. You have the covenant confirming meal. In this first contract, the covenant confirming meal was on the floor of heaven, where it says they ate and drank face to face with Elohim, with Yahweh. This first contract, the entry into the priesthood was circumcision of the flesh, remember? The sign of being in contract, the sign of being in covenant and contract is wearing your Shabbat. So it's like a wedding ring. It's like keeping the Shabbats. And then their assignment was to, they would be known by their exploits that they did on behalf of Elohim. They were going to go out into the world and clean it up. Here you see, this is the first Shavuot. They're at the base of Mount Sinai. They're making a contract with Papa. And this is found in Exodus 19 through 24. But Yahweh actually creates a fault in this contract. And we see that in the New Testament, or in the Brit Hadashah, as they're talking about this, as Shaul's talking about this, there was a fault in this contract that he made because he had to guarantee that this would be broken. Of course, it was going to be broken, but he knew that. But to guarantee that it was going to be broken, he created a fault in it. Now, what was that fault? Remember, the new contract, the new covenant, was a superior one. That one has everything you need in order to be able to keep this royal law of love. The old one, the first one, didn't have something that the new one has. The old one did not come with the Ruach HaKodesh. Remember when Yahweh says, I'm going to trade out a heart of stone for a heart of flesh idea? We see that this one did not come with the Ruach HaKodesh on it, which is going to guarantee that it was going to get broken. Now, it didn't have to get broken as quickly as it did. Of course not. They could have totally benefited from years of being with Papa and having him fight for them, and they could have benefited a lot and gotten a lot of those bennies and lived under them for a long time before they broke it. But they broke it really quickly. But here, we're not there quite yet. Very, very crucial thing to understand about this contract was this is how he was going to be able to deal with original sin back here. So it's absolutely stunning because what he does is he, for the first time in history, attaches this royal law of love to a contract that has a death position. Do you follow me? So if anybody breaks this royal law of love without it being attached to a contract that has a death position, he can't just die for somebody breaking this. Everything in heaven is done legally. Papa doesn't do anything illegally, remember? And so everything is legal. It's a legal transaction. So because the Hasadan will stick him to it, the adversary will not let Papa get away with anything that is not done legally. So here we have the royal law of love for the first time in history being written down in human words and attached to a contract that has a death position. So if that contract is broken, as in if this is broken, somebody has to die to pay for that, which in the end, Yeshua ended up dying to pay for everyone who has broken this contract, who wants to be saved. Isn't that so cool? This is how he dealt with original sin. So his royal law is now attached to this first contract, okay? This contract. All right, so here we go. Yeah, one of the things that's always struck me is that 2,000 years into Earth's history, and finally Papa writes it down. I mean, obviously, it got to a point where no one knew how to love each other. No one even understood this law at all. And how sad that, his royal law of love wasn't known. And for 2,000 years, it wasn't written down. Finally, he wrote it down for us to know. But I think my opinion is that he was hoping that people would know him, that they would know him and have him in them, and they would know how to just love, right? But it didn't work like that. He had to write it down. All right, so Israel said yes to Papa. They agreed to be his bride, and they entered into into a marriage type arrangement with Yehovah back here at the base of Mount Sinai. Okay, but if you remember, they just got done saying I do. Moses goes back up to the mountain to get instructions for the tabernacle. And as he's up there, what happens? 40 days later, they get yancy, they start to grumble and complain, and they build an altar. They build 40 days after they saw and heard all that they saw and heard, and 40 days later, they begin to grumble, and they make a golden calf. And they begin to worship the golden calf. As soon as they did that, it broke this contract. As soon as they did that, it broke the contract. Because in the contract, it says, do not have any other gods before me. What were they doing? They were creating a god, a man-made god, and they were creating a man-made holiday. And they said, we're going to honor Yehovah with our man-made god and our man-made traditions on our man-made holiday. And they broke the contract right there. The sin of idolatry is a sin of idolatry. Same thing. Because this contract was broken, no longer was this the way to keep this law. They couldn't do it anymore because that way was blocked now. It was gone because they broke it. So no longer could they keep the law by being married to him, as they were going to be Melchizedek priests for him, blocked. That way to keep the royal law is now blocked. And as my friend Seth noticed, don't grumble, because grumbling leads to idolatry. Simply said. Grumbling leads to idolatry, so don't grumble. So because Israel now broke the contract, because that contract was broken, it enacts the death penalty, the death position in that contract. Remember the death position that was in the Genesis 15. We see in that covenant that Yehovah makes with Abraham, if the future descendants break that contract, the future contract to come, this first Melchizedek contract, if they break that, then somebody's going to look like those animals that they passed through. And remember, Yeshua passed through on Abraham's behalf. So as soon as this contract was broken, that death position was enacted. So as soon as that was, Yeshua was going to have to die at that point. All right, but what makes it so cool is also that at the same time that Yeshua ends up paying the price for Israel committing adultery right here and the golden calf incident and breaking this contract, now he also pays for original sin, because now this law is now attached to this contract. Remember, and if anyone breaks this law, they die. But here we have it attached to a contract with a death position, and so the death position is enacted because that contract is now broken, which means that he can go back and he can actually pay for original sin. This is the Lamb of Yehovah. Yeshua was the Lamb of Yehovah to pay this price. Cool. So do you remember how Moses takes the tables of stone and he breaks them? It was a sign, more than just he was upset, it was a sign that the contract had been broken, right? And then remember how Yehovah says to Moses, now next time you bring your own tablets up to me and I will write the law on it. Well, that was symbolic. That was a foreshadow. That was a picture of something that was going to happen in the future when we would bring our hearts to him and he would write his law on it. What law, you say, he's going to write on our hearts? Of course, this law. And where do we find this law? Exodus 19 through 24, we find this law written down. So do you remember what Papa promised, though? He promises a new heart. He promises a better contract than this one. That better contract was going to have everything that Israel needs in order to be able to keep this and be perfect as our Father in heaven is perfect. So to do that, he makes a promise, and he promises the new heart. He promises a heart of flesh, that we'll be able to trade out a heart of stone for a heart of flesh. Okay, but now you see that Israel is sick. Okay, the original idea was for Yahweh to have a nation of royal priests to go out into the world. But now Israel is not qualified to be able to be that nation of priests anymore. Now, if you look at it, like, Israel is sick. Now they need prescriptive law. Now they need something to help them get better. And instead of being a nation of priests, they become a nation with priests. This is where you see the Levitical stuff come into play. So here we go, watch this. Okay, so now we're at the point where we see that Israel is no longer eligible to be a nation of priests. Now what we see happen is that Israel becomes a nation with priests, as I said. He chooses the Levites to become the ministers to Israel. So, and then this is where you see extra law. So here we have the eternal royal law written on the tablets of stone, which we believe is the full entire covenant, not just the 10. Everything you see in Exodus 19 through 24, that is the law, not the stipulations to the contract per se, but everything in there that is speaking about the law of love, that is all written on the tablets of stone, we believe, and is put into the Ark of the Covenant. So the Ark of the Covenant, inside there is stone tablets that has this royal law of love on it. They're in the Ark, okay? There are two documents that the scriptures talks about. One document is the tablets of stone that are in the Ark of the Covenant that holds the royal law of love on it. On the outside is something very different. On the outside, we see in Deuteronomy, on the outside of the Ark, there is something placed. Do you know what it is? Well, when Israel became sick, as in when they broke the contract, the first contract, now they needed more law. Yeah, they weren't doing very well, so we got more law going on. So you have the Levitical temporary, it's a temporary priesthood that was put in place to minister to Israel now. Not to go to the world, but to minister to Israel. And you see in there extra law. So more law being placed, and that's outside of that first contract, that first Exodus 19 through 24. It is all this other law, it's outside. Now, before you throw me out the window, there are what's called Melchizedek issues. And those Melchizedek issues are anything prior this first contract is a Melchizedek issue if it's not mentioned in Exodus 19 through 24. So Melchizedek issue would be like the food laws. They're not specifically mentioned in the contract, in the law here written down in this contract, but we know that Noah knew about unclean and clean, and so the food laws are a Melchizedek issue that we see prior this contract. So therefore, they stand as part of this law. Anything after that enhances, reveals, teaches on whatever's in this contract, whatever is in this law, that's the law that's written down in this contract, or prior, then of course it's a Melchizedek issue, because it's going to teach us about more of it. What does it mean? What does it mean to celebrate Feast of Unleavened Bread? What is the Feast of Weeks all about? What is, Passover all about? All of this in here is expounded upon in the Levitical law, and we need those. That's Melchizedek issue. Okay. But what I want you to understand is that there were two documents here. One was the tablets of stone that went into the ark. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing. We don't want that to go away. But on the outside, there's a scroll. It's called the Book of the Law. In Deuteronomy, you can see that, and it is placed on the outside of the Ark of the Covenant as a witness against you. This is what Moses says for them to do, is to place it on the outside of the Ark of the Covenant as a witness against you. So in Deuteronomy, you see Moses rehearsing Israel's story, and you see him writing down these words in the Book of the Law, and you see him tell them to put it on the outside as a witness against you. This Levitical law was extra law. It didn't do away with the royal law, because notice the royal law is eternal. It never goes away. It's always been and always will be that eternal royal law of love, right? It's always been, always will be. And it's written down in human terms in Exodus 19 through 24. And we see it in this first contract he makes with them. That does not go away. That is the overarching law. The Levitical law is like a smaller umbrella under the bigger umbrella, as Dr. David Perry says. The Levitical law is now extra. All right, there's more there, because man, Israel just could not seem to remember. That's where the tzitzits come in. If you look at where the tzitzit wearing comes in, the tzitzits come in after this contract. Papa's frustrated with Israel because Israel cannot seem to remember to keep his law of love. They cannot remember, so he says, fine, you're going to wear the tzitzits so that you remember to keep my law. That's where that comes in. But this extra law, the Levitical law that was written on a scroll and put outside the Ark of the Covenant as a witness against you, it was to witness against them so that they would remember that they broke this first contract with the golden calf incident. With the golden calf incident, they broke this first contract. That is what that scroll on the outside was supposed to say to Israel, to say, remember, you broke it. Let's not do this. You broke it. You broke it. It's a witness against her. Okay? That concept, that understanding is really important to understand when we get to Yeshua and his sacrifice, to figure out what was actually said against us and what is done away with. Yahweh strives with Israel, like trying to get her to love him the way he wants to be loved. And he's striving with her, and finally he's so frustrated, he's so done. He divorces Israel in Hosea. He actually divorces her. But why does he divorce her? He divorces her primarily because, he divorces her because she needs to be free in order to marry another. So according to his law, a husband can't divorce a wife and then remarry her. So he's got this thing in place called a kinsman redeemer. But remember, the kinsman redeemer can marry her, can bring her back into the family through the kinsman redeemer. So he divorces Israel so that he can have her remarry, but he chooses the groom. And why does he do this? He chooses the groom because the whole goal here, and remember this whole goal, is to get us his last name. The only way that we can get the inheritance is to get his last name. So he's got to figure out how to bring us into his family, his royal family, and get us his last name so that we can get Hasatan's claim off of us and get the happily ever after, to get the inheritance. This is the beautiful plan. actually so strategic, so incredible that forever Elohim will be praised up and down for what an incredibly strategic, very intricate plan and covert that he had withheld a lot of this from humanity so that Hasatan would know what was going on. So there was, we're on the other side of Yeshua, so it's really nice for us to have our eyes opened and ears now to hear so we can actually see what happened. But back then, it had to be covert, otherwise Hasatan would never have allowed Yeshua to be the kinsman redeemer, to pay the price for sin. So as we go forward, we see that Yehovah divorces Israel so that she can remarry. So she's going to remarry the kinsman redeemer that is going to come from Papa's own body, from his own loins. All right, so here we go. So Papa he divorces Israel, but he's going to take care of Israel's children. So the children of Israel, he makes 3 promises, even several, but 3 that I can see here. He promises that he's going to send the Messiah, send a deliverer to pay for the sin of adultery, for breaking the contract. He promises that he's going to provide a new and better contract than the first one. And he promises that that new contract is going to come with everything they need in order to keep this royal law of love this time. And all of these things he accomplished through his son, Yeshua HaMashiach. And let's see how he does this. Bridge that I chose here is I'm bridging between the first contract and the second contract. So the old covenant to the new covenant. That's the bridge is the Levitical priesthood, and I chose a temporary, because it is temporary, it's a temporary priesthood. I chose a swinging bridge because it was a temporary priesthood. It was there for a time, for a reason. It was a good thing because it was how Papa was going to be able to show up and be among his people while everything had to wait for the proper appointed times until Yeshua came to be the kinsman redeemer and to pay the price for breaking of the contract and original sin, and to give us the new contract that comes with everything we need to keep this royal law of love so that we can live, so we can have eternal life, not break it, and pay the eternal death option. So I chose this kind of bridge to represent the temporariness of it. All right, so let's see how Yeshua actually becomes the kinsman redeemer. Yeshua was born of a human mom, Miriam, right? She was a virgin. He was born of the virgin, which makes him human. But his daddy was Yehovah, divine, which makes him divine, which also makes him the heir to Yehovah and all to his papa, to the heir of this state, basically. Yeshua was born on the first high Shabbat of Sukkot, of the Feast of Tabernacles. Remember, and 8 days later, on the last day, on the last great day, the last Shabbat of the Feast of Tabernacles or Sukkot, is when he was circumcised, when he was dedicated to Yehovah. He was born in basically Tishri 15 in the year 3998. Yes. Find Rude's calendar, figure it out. It's awesome. The thing is cool. You gotta, all the work and all the study that him and his team did. Love it. In the year 3998, Yeshua was born. So let's remember that Yeshua was not from the line of Levi. He was from the line of Judah. He was from the kingly line. So Miriam, you can look back in her genealogy and you find that she comes directly from King Solomon's line. Joseph there's no blood there or anything that goes into Yeshua. So there's no connection there except for that Joseph raised Yeshua. But Joseph too was from the kingly line of Judah, but he was from another son. I think it was Nathan. So, but Miriam was from the kingly line, so she was from the royal line of King Solomon, and his father is the Melchizedek, the royal one, the righteous one, the king of righteousness, the real royalty. So here you have the royalty of humans, the royalty of Israel, and the royalty of the universe, the Melchizedek himself converging right here in Yeshua. Isn't that amazing? I just think that is so cool. Because he was from the line of Judah and not the line of Levi, he couldn't have been a Levite priest even if he wanted to be. He was from the line of Judah, from the kingly line. He had the legal right to be the perfect Lamb of Yehovah, and pay for sin was afforded to him through the guarantee. Remember, through the guarantee that Yehovah made with Abraham and the pieces, and he walked through on Abraham's behalf. That legal right to be the Lamb was afforded him through that contract that they made back in Genesis 15. He was traded for Isaac on Mount Moriah, and Yeshua was sacrificed on Mount Moriah. So trade of firstborns, he earned that right. That was a part of the agreement that they made, and a part of the deal with that kind of covenant that was made back there in Exodus or in Genesis 15. And just like the ram was a substitute for Isaac, Yeshua became the substitute for us, right? So, there's just so much. This is beautiful, people. Yeshua was the substitute for the descendants of Abraham that were going to break the covenant and break the contract that they would enter, and for all humanity that he was the substitute. YHVH, so beautiful. So he was the prophet that Moses spoke of, that we must shema, hear, and then obey, remember? So he is the prophet that Moses was speaking about. But now what I want you to see is this change. So in the Torah, there is provision for change in Torah, not to Torah. It says that until Shiloh come, there's a change that is prophesied that would come. It's not going to change Torah because there is that. It's already, the provision has already been made for this change to happen later. It's already been made in the Torah. So we're not changing Torah. We are looking at what changed in Torah. Okay? So we're not, we're dividing the word of truth. Important because we're looking at what was changed in Torah, not to Torah. Let's look at what changed. What was nailed to the cross? What was done away with and what does remain. This is what you do as a Bible student. This is what you do as a Berean, as you look at, as you're dividing the word of truth. So there's truth and you're dividing truth. So what remains and what was done away with. So in the scriptures, and I'll put the text up here, Colossians, that you can see that what was done away with was what was nailed to the cross. What was nailed to the cross? What was set against us? Yes. It says in there that what was set against us was nailed to the cross. Well, that's the same language, the same verbiage as what was here on the outside of the Ark of the Covenant. What was set against us? It was the extra law. It was the temporary Levitical law that was reminding us why they were under Levitical, why they were under moral law, why they had a priesthood that was ministering to them instead of them being a nation of priests, was because they broke the contract. That's why this was sitting outside the Ark of the Covenant, because it was going to be a witness against them to say, hey, you broke that, that's why you're under this now. Sacrificed. His sacrifice ended this temporary law. His sacrifice paid for the breach of the first contract, for the sin of adultery that Israel had committed. His death paid for anyone that breaks this royal law who wants eternal life. They can have it through him. He is now the only way. We're going to talk about that in a second. But his death did many, many things. But again, as you see in Colossians, it says that what was nailed to the cross, it was what was set against us. And what was set against us was this extra law, this scroll that was written as a book of the law. There's two books, remember? Book of the covenant and book of the law. You can see that in the scriptures. So we're dividing the word of truth. So that was what was set against us. That was what was done away with. And that is what was making the Purushim, the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the day so angry at him, is that he was stopping. He was putting an end to their jobs, is what he was doing. He was taking away their jobs. He was stripping them of the power that they had and the control they had over the people. So it was going to be over for them, and they knew it, and there was no way they wanted to let that go. So we see this change in Hebrews. When you have these eyes and you read Hebrews again, it's going to change the way you see this, because then you'll understand what law is being done away with, and what law remains. Remember that he promised a superior contract. That superior contract has the Ruach as part of it. It's a helper. Okay, there's all kinds of beautiful things about this new contract. It's called the superior contract than the first. Superior covenant is what it's called. But I'm looking at it as contracts. So it's the superior contract to the first one. Look at these contracts like this. You have, let's say you enter into contract with, you're going to buy a car. And the first contract you enter this contract, and it's, let's say, for a Volkswagen Bug. And the contract is that, on the 30th day of the month, you owe $8,000 every month for like 30 years for this Volkswagen Bug, right? That's not a very good contract. You're going to break that contract because that's impossible to keep, right? But let's say there's a new contract that comes, and that new contract has, man, you're going to get a better car. So you get like, I don't know, Jeep Commander, Hummer, I don't know, something like that. You get this better car, and the payment is like the 30th day of the month, you pay $5. Can you keep that contract? Yes, it's the yoke is easy, my burden is light. It's a superior contract to the old one. And not only is it going to be $5 a month, but he's going to give you what you need to make that $5 in order for you to pay the $5. He's going to give you an envelope with a stamp on it, with the address on it. I mean, it's a better contract. Okay, so if you think about it in terms of contract, I think this will be so helpful. What you need to understand, though, is this second contract, this new covenant, as it's referred to. A lot of people understand it to be, but this new contract comes with the Ruach HaKodesh. It comes with a new heart, the new and noble heart, the good heart, has the good soil in it, remember? It's going to come with the Ruach HaKodesh on it. It's going to come with his law written on it. Now, what law is that? What law is going to be written on the heart that comes with this new contract? This law. And where do we find this law? In Exodus 19 through 24, it is written down in human words, right? This is how you love each other. This is how you love Yehovah. Okay, so the new covenant comes with absolutely everything that you need to keep it. I'll show you how this works. Let's go back to the change. The change terminates the Levitical order. Yeshua's sacrifice and resurrection ended the temporary Levitical system and rendered the Levites jobless. It ushered in the new Melchizedek era, the new Melchizedek contract and priesthood. Yeah, isn't that cool? So just for a second, let's look at this contract, this second Melchizedek contract, and how it's superior, and what the formalities of it are that enact it. Remember back then, we looked at the formalities that enacted that first contract, which was like animal blood, physical circumcision, this sort of thing. Let's look at this contract. What enacts this contract in us? Well, let's look at the formalities that enact it. For one, blood ratification. So this is a blood covenant. Blood ratification is through Yeshua's blood, his superior blood. His blood is superior than animals. That's why we don't do sacrifices anymore, because we have his superior blood. We have a covenant confirming meal. Remember when he says, I want to knock at the door, you open, and I'll come in and sup with you and you with me. That is a wedding language. That is the covenant confirming meal of the new Melchizedek contract. It's a new covenant. Entry into this priesthood, entry into this contract is what? It's not circumcision of the flesh anymore. It is actually circumcision of the heart. So circumcision of the heart is more important than circumcision of the flesh. And the sign of the covenant, what would be the sign of being in this contract? Keeping the Shabbats. The same sign is back there. Yahweh said it over and over through the scriptures. This is a sign of that you're in contract with me. The sign that we're in covenant is the Shabbats. Same thing. So you will be keeping the Shabbats. So the weekly Shabbat and the 7 annual Shabbats. That is a sign. That's your wedding ring. Or actually, on this side, we're betrothed. Over there, back there, they were married. So it was their wedding ring. Now we're betrothed, because the great wedding feast hasn't happened, right? So we're betrothed. So it means that this is the sign that you're going to be wedded. The sign that you are engaged, that you're betrothed, is the engagement ring, is the Shabbats, that you're keeping the Shabbats. And then what is the assignment of the priesthood under this contract? The assignment is to seek his kingdom and his righteousness. So seeking his kingdom would be seeking scattered Israel, seeking his people. Seeking Yahweh's righteousness would be seeking the right doings of Yahweh, which would be this royal law of love. Then it would be, as Yeshua said when he ascended, was the Great Commission, as in go out and tell the world and preach the good news. And then also he said, don't forget to tell Miriam's story. And that's huge. And I go over that. We talk about that a lot in the Ladies of Teshuvah workshop as to what did Yeshua mean by that, and why did he say that her story must be told every single time the story of the gospel is told. It's a big one, and it's for ladies, so I want to see you at the Ladies of Teshuvah workshop. And the priests will be known by their love. By their love, right? So we're trying to keep, the goal is to give us everything we need to keep this royal law of love, and of course, his priests are going to be known. We're going to reflect Yahweh. We're going to be loving like Yahweh. We're going to love like Yahweh, right? So we have the end of the Levitical system. We have Yeshua's sacrifice. He is the only way. That's why the scripture says that he's the one way. The one way to keeping this law is through him. Now, what does that mean? What does that look like? So again, this new contract is the prophesied superior way to keeping this royal law of love. It's a superior contract because it has the Ruach HaKodesh living in us, helping us, moving us to keep this royal law of love, delighting in it, wanting to do it, not, grinning and bearing it, but wanting to do it. Yes. And also, Yeshua is the way we get to eat of Yeshua, have Yeshua in us to make us perfect like him. We get the Ruach HaKodesh living in our hearts, moving us, to follow him and to keep his law that's written on our hearts. I mean, he has done everything he can to give us everything we need to be able to keep this. It's stubbornness, it's pride, it's being taught enmity to the law, it's having a misunderstanding of what grace is all about, and that we actually need to be doing something. It's a misunderstanding of what sin is that is keeping people from really fully understanding this contract and entering into it properly and obeying. sinning and it's going to cover me. No, there is no such thing as sloppy grace. Grace is the fact that this way has been made. Grace is the fact that this contract has been made for you to enter so that you can keep his royal law of love and not die. That is grace. That is the Hebrew definition of grace, that a way has been made, not that you can say, I can continue to sin and grace will cover me. No, there is mercy, absolutely, and Papa knows your story. He knows what you know and what you don't know. So I am not Papa, I am not God, I am not your judge. He is your judge. But just beware that there is a contract, there is one way. This is the narrow way. Yeshua is the narrow way. And grace means that there is a way that you get to walk to the happily ever after. And for that, we should be so thankful. There is no other way to keeping this royal law, this everlasting royal law, besides through Yeshua. Through the promise that Yeshua gave, which is the Ruach HaKodesh in us and the new heart and eating of him, which is what unleavened bread is all about, teaching us how to eat of him. There is absolutely no other way. This is the narrow path right here. All right, so Yeshua is now the high priest and king in the Melchizedek order, in the order of his father. He is the high priest. He is the Kohen Gadol. He is not operating as a king yet. He has the scroll. He has the title deed. So the title deed is now back in the hands of a human being. Remember, he's human and divine, but he's human, so that title deed is now back in his hands. He basically got taken back to the beginning to retake the test that Adam failed. Isn't that cool? I just think that is so cool. He's called the second Adam, and he got taken back during his 40 days in the wilderness. He got taken back to the tree, redid that test, and got the planet back, got the title deed back into the hands of a human being, because that title deed shouldn't be in the hands of a demon. It can't be. The demon can't own the planet. It's owned by a human, and Papa had to figure out a way to get that title deed back from Hasatan into human hands, which this is how it happened. This contract was fulfilled at Shavuot after Yeshua rose, and after he ascended. Remember, he said, wait, after he ascended, he said, wait in Jerusalem for the promise to come. That promise was going to enact this contract, because that is a huge part of this contract, is the indwelling of the Ruach HaKodesh, and the outpouring of her was so important to come in and make this contract valid for us to enter into. So this contract is a superior contract, a superior method by which we keep this law. I like that. And think of it as a mechanism by which we keep this royal law. It's a better way to keep it. How is Yeshua the only way? All right, so Yeshua is the kinsman redeemer. This is how he is the way. All right, he is Yehovah's son. Therefore he is the executor, however you say that, of Yehovah's will. He is the legal heir to the inheritance. He is the one that can give us the family name back. Okay, so by marrying or being betrothed to Yeshua, we can get the family name of Yehovah back, and we can become heirs with him to Yehovah's will. So Yehovah has a will, and what is his will? His will is that we have everlasting life. His will is that we keep this law so we can live with him forever. His will is to have his kids with him. His will is to have his creation with him. His will is to interact with creation and engage together. I mean, he wanted to give love, and he wants to receive love. His will is beautiful. I mean, and Yeshua is now the kinsman redeemer that can enact the will of Yehovah, that we can actually get Yehovah's last name by being betrothed to Yeshua. But the only way we get this is by being in contract with him. We have to be betrothed to Yeshua to get the inheritance. right? The way we do that is through this contract, through this new contract, new covenant, the new Melchizedek contract. That's how we get him to be our bridegroom. I'm almost at the end of my graph. It's been taking forever, hasn't it? Through identification with Yeshua, we are established as the firstborn of Yahweh and work in his priesthood as priests unto him under his Melchizedek priest Yeshua, our husband-to-be. For now we are priests that serve him, and we will seek out scattered Israel and the right doings of Yahovah. So what is the sign of our betrothal again to Yeshua? Our sign of the betrothal, same thing, Shabbats. Keeping the rhythm. It's keeping the feast rhythm. That is the Shabbats, the feast rhythm. When you turn from pagan rhythm and you turn and you keep Papa's rhythm, that's huge. That's going to change your life. That is the cross to carry, man. That is going to rock your world. But that is going to show everyone that you are his and not the pagans. That you're serving the one true living God, not the others. That is your sign. That is the sign. So our bridegroom has given us a gift. He has empowered his bride to be, his betrothed, with a gift to keep this law. The new heart. And the new heart has on it the royal law written on it. It's a heart of flesh, not a heart of stone. It has the Ruach HaKodesh living in it, moving us to keep his ways, moving us to want to eat of Yeshua so we can have him in us, so we have the bread of life in us, so that we can be perfect like our Father in heaven is perfect. So you remember how Moses symbolically brought the tablets of stone to Papa to have him write down on. That's what we do here with this contract, with this covenant. We get to bring our hearts to Papa and say, please write your law and give me your Ruach HaKodesh, which Yeshua said that Yahovah would never, ever deny you. If you ask for the Ruach HaKodesh, he will not deny you that. But you can commit the unpardonable sin against the Ruach HaKodesh, as in blasphemy, as in the idea of if she comes and you do not respond appropriately, she will go. And there is no hope for you. So you must obey, and you must obey quickly when she comes, because she may not come again. Yeshua said it himself. While the Ruach is here, you better take part. Now, Yeshua has restored so much. If you look in Hebrews, it says in Hebrews, a change in priesthood means a change in law. What is that about? Well, I'm just showing you. I'm showing you what that change is that Hebrews is talking about. That Shavuot is desperately trying to explain to everyone what has actually happened here. No longer Levitical, now we're Melchizedek, from the line of Judah. Now we have a restoration. So Yeshua is all about restoration. He's restoring stuff. So now he's restored the Melchizedek priesthood. And his priests are going to restore. All right, his priests are not going to cause confusion. If somebody's causing you confusion, really look and say, are you actually a priest of Yahovah? I don't know. Are you a priest of Yeshua? Are you a Melchizedek priest for real? Because you're causing a ton of confusion. And then if they're not speaking in love, another red flag. Okay, so red flags would be teaching Levitical stuff. Red flag would be teaching things not in love. Red flag would be not restoring things, but causing chaos. Melchizedek priesthood and its one easy, simple, not burdensome law is restored because of what Yeshua did. Having a Melchizedek priesthood, the Melchizedek priesthood is now operational just as Yahovah intended back then. So now he's gathering a royal nation of priests that will go out into the world and teach others about Yahovah, about the royal law of love, and bring them into contract with him. So our number one job is to learn it. walk in it, teach our families what this royal law of love is so that we can keep it, so that we can get to the happily ever after. So Yeshua is our new high priest in this royal order. He's also the king, and he will come back someday and claim it and operate as a king. So he is the king. He's holding the title deed right now. He is the lamb, the only one that can hold that title deed and begin to strip the seals, as we see in Revelation. So he's got the title deed to the planet, but he hasn't been released to come back. There's a lot of prerequisites to his return, so we're waiting for those to happen, and then he'll come back as king. But right now, he's operating as a priest, the high priest, not a priest, but he is the high priest, and he's teaching the priests that he's gathering how to operate as priests as well. Right now, Yeshua is looking for you. He's looking for people who care. He's looking for people who want to work for him, who want to be priests for him, who want to pour their life out for his Father. Huge thing that they are doing, which is trying to save people's lives, to get them onto the rescue boat off the sinking Titanic. And so he's looking for help. He's searching the world for scattered Israelites, and so that's what we're supposed to be doing. So if you hear the call, then you respond to him, and don't you wait. You just pour your life out for him. That's what you need to be doing with your life. What is the point? The point of this whole story, this is Papa's story, the whole point of this incredibly complex and strategic plan to get us to the happily ever after, that's the point, to get us to the happily ever after, to get us to paradise restored. Now remember, he's not making all new things. He's going to make all things new. That's what the scripture says. So we look at this beautiful cycle, the pattern that he's got going. He's going to restore what was stolen. Okay, what was stolen was paradise. He's going to restore it. He's going to restore love, and he's going to restore paradise, all right? So this is the point of this whole thing. The point of getting into contract, into this new contract, to get under this new superior contract, is so that you can get to the happily ever after, to paradise restored. But in order to do that, you have to become what we are calling a legal bride. Before I close, in order to get to the happily ever after, in order to get to the great wedding feast, well, in order to get to the great happily ever after, you have to go through the great wedding feast. You have to go through judgment, through the great wedding feast, right? This is how you do it. All right, but before I go, I want to describe the legal bride. So just understand this. Who gets the inheritance? The bride, the wife, the one that has a formal agreement with the man, or the girlfriend? You can shack up for years. You can go ahead and I know there's common law and all that stuff, but that aside, you can shack up for years, and who gets the inheritance of that man if he dies? Is it the girlfriend that's shacking up with him? She doesn't have his name. She's not going to get his inheritance because she doesn't have a legal agreement with him. She doesn't have his last name. The one that gets the inheritance of the groom, or the man, or the husband, is, if he dies, it is the bride who has his last name. It is his wife. You have to be legally betrothed. You have to be a legal bride to get the inheritance. Do you understand this? Nothing more important than getting into this contract and keeping it with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength, all your everything, and doing it with all the things that Yeshua has given us in order to be able to keep it, which is the Ruach HaKodesh in us, which is eating of him, drinking of him. You're going to have him in you so that you can be perfect as the Father in heaven is perfect. Remember how he says, I want them in, how does it go? I want you in them as you and I are in each other, kind of thing. It's that thing. He's given us everything we need to be in this contract, to get to the happily ever after and have every dream you ever wanted come true on that side. But you have to be a legal bride to do it. One other thing that that I've always said is something that just struck me one day was, can you imagine if you are just shacked up with Yeshua or Jesus or whatever, and let's say you get up to the pearly gates, right? And I know it's not going to happen like this, but let's just say, for the sake of a word picture, a parable, you have Yehovah on this side with a file cabinet, and you have Hasatan over here, and Hasatan does not want you going through those pearly gates. He does not want you entering into the happily ever after, into heaven, right? So as you come up, Yehovah wants you to enter so bad, but he has to have the paperwork for you to enter, because Hasatan will not allow you to get through there unless he proves that you have come into contract with him. He's got to prove that you have his last name, that you're part of the family, right? And that you're covered by the blood of Yeshua. So Papa's looking through his file cabinet. Oh my goodness, where's her name? Oh, there's the paperwork. She's been keeping all the Shabbats. She's been keeping my commandments. She's in covenant. Yes, Yeshua's blood covers her. Go away, Hasatan. You may go in. But what if you come up and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't see your paperwork. But I love Jesus with all my heart. I've loved him since I was a little girl. I've done so many things. I've gone on mission trips. I've done this, that. I've healed the sick. I've done this and that. And what is he going to say? Get away from me. I don't know you, you violator of the Torah. And what is Hasatan going to do? He's going to take you, and there's going to be it's like sick. He's going to get sick joy from that by tearing you away from the love of your life, but you didn't enter contract with him. You didn't become legal. You didn't get the paperwork that Papa needed. You ignored that. Instead, you have no paperwork. You cannot enter. You have to have the paperwork to get in. So I think that's going to be Hasatan's sickest joy, is to be able to take someone who has been in love with Jesus their whole life, done many things, live their life very, very pure, very, very much according to the Christian life, and yet they are not in contract with Papa, and Hasatan will claim them. Please don't be that. Please don't be that person. Get into contract with Papa. He promises good things. There's one other story I'm going to close with, and that is, I can't remember where I heard this, but as far as I know, there was a man during the Holocaust who he was in possession of about something like 1,500 slips of paper that would free a Jew. He ended up climbing on top of the boxcars, and in the middle of the night, and he's shoving these pieces of paper down through the holes in the top of these boxcars to the people, to the Jews that were in these cars going to be slaughtered. And he's shoving these papers down, and they're grabbing them because they know this is their freedom. It's their ticket out. And he did everything he could to get these papers to as many as he could. That is what Papa's doing right now for you. That's what he wants. He's on top of the boxcar trying to get you the paperwork that you need to free you from Hasatan's claim. The paperwork that you need to be free. The paperwork that you need to get to the happily ever after, to paradise restored, is his last name. You have to get it, and the only way to do that is enter into contract with him over here and keep his covenant, keep his law, keep his royal law. You can't break it and break it and break. There's mercy, but he said, what did Yeshua say? Go and sin no more, go and sin no more, go and sin no more. He didn't say, go ahead and sin and my grace covers you. That's not what he said. So, people, I do what I do because I want you to get to the happily ever after. I want Papa to be happy beyond anything. You're there. So I'm going to pour myself out with just what I know about this beautiful story, And I hope that you see what I see. May you have eyes to see and ears to hear. May this be what you choose to do with your life, is to get into contract with Yeshua, become a betrothed, wear your engagement ring, wear that ring, the Shabbats, his calendar, his feast days, obey the contract, obey the royal law. That's found in Exodus 19 through 24. And don't worry about covenant benefits right now. This contract has different bennies than the first one. Some of them are the same, but they are definitely some different. There's more, there's different ones, but don't worry about that. Just get into contract right now. And I want to see you at the happily ever after. I want to see you restored. This is a process of getting your heart back. See, at the beginning, the problem was, as John Eldridge talks about, there was a problem at the heart, level of the heart back there, at the tree. For Adam and Hava to question Papa's heart, there was a problem at the level of the heart. Yeshua, with his gift, the new heart, he's fixed that. They have done everything they can to give us new hearts. Now it's a journey and it's a process, and it's going to take some time to get your heart, healed and fully back and fully restored. So don't worry, don't think you have to be changed by next week. This is a long journey. You're here to just journey. You're here to walk with Papa. He wants to walk with you. He wants to walk with you through the course of this. So, what more to say? This graph is available on our website. You would be good to have one. Get it, read it, put it up on your wall, show it to your family and friends, walk them through this. This will change their life. This has been 2 years in the making for me to actually get this video done. It's been very long in the making to get this graph done, years and years. And I'm so happy to give it to Israel at this point, to offer it to the King so that he can use it, if he wishes, to help you get to the happily ever after.